Well, hello there. I'm freshly home, very freshly home from the Sim Racing Expo, and just like everybody else out there, basically, I wanted to make a video to talk about some of my thoughts on the very surprise Assetto Corsa Rally game that's coming out quite soon, at least in alpha. So if you somehow didn't hear, Assetto Corsa, or the folks Kunos and 505 and that whole group announced at Sim Racing Expo that they're making a rally game, Assetto Corsa Rally. Now, it isn't actually the same Kunos that are making Assetto Corsa Evo. It's a separate team, which is a very good thing because that means it's not going to take away from development on the other game. I think they're getting a bit of backlash because Evo's been in an alpha for over a year now without maybe as much development as people wanted. But this is a separate studio for all the development team, and it's been going since 2021. And so I think you'll be able to tell, or I was able to tell, that this is quite a lot more advanced than I was expecting. It's something that's clearly been being worked on for quite a while. From what I saw, there's already a bunch of videos about this that have a ton of details, but I was able to try this game out for over an hour at the expo on a bunch of different rigs, trying a bunch of the different cars on all of the stages, I think, and I got some great access to talk to some of the developers that are making the game, or a lot of the development team that is making the game. And I tried to think of the most creative questions that I could, or really the things that I care about with these rally games. If you watch any of my stuff, I love doing RBR with some of the hardcore championships we have in that with Sim Rally Masters. You know, I did also enjoy playing EAWRC and Dirt Rally 2 and stuff, but I really do enjoy the more sim-focused rally games. And right off the get-go, there's something a little bit different about this one that's got me really excited, but it's not all roses. There's some good and there's some bad, and I wanted to go through some of the notes I've taken. And I wanted to do also just a quick video because I'm going to be putting together probably a pretty long video about the whole Sim Racing Expo and things, but that's going to take a few days, and so I just wanted to do something pretty quick to share some of the info I have. So I was very fortunate that I was able to test this game in a bunch of different rigs and different scenarios and things, and got to compare all of them to each other. And overall, my main takeaway from the driving, I'm going to be very brief on this part because it's so hard to tell when you're at these type of shows how the thing drives because you're using random pedals and wheels and stuff, and also doing very limited amount of testing. But I enjoyed the driving in all of the experiences that I had. I really did not have a bad time at all. I had trouble driving the i20 Hyundai, but that's probably more of a skill thing. But I drove the 131 Abarth, I drove the Lancia Delta on both tarmac and the gravel in different rigs and things, and all of them were really intuitive and fun to drive. I felt like I could take my skills from an RBR and use them directly in the game. And everybody I've talked to that does sim racing stuff that got to try the game, I really didn't hear much bad feedback at all from anybody that was there about the driving experience itself, the limited driving experience that we were able to get with the little alpha that they had. The most critical things I heard were that it's really slick, or some folks were having trouble getting it slowed down for hairpins and stuff. But in my opinion, it skews much more towards what it feels like in an RBR type situation, where it's very hard to get slowed down when you're on a loose surface or you're on a dusty road or something, compared to maybe like a Dirt Rally 2 or EAWRC, which if you've never watched me, I like both of those games quite a lot. I've played hundreds of hours of them. I'm not just an RBR guy, but those tend to be a little bit more forgiving in some of those scenarios. And so this game, I feel like, goes more towards that simulation. And from talking to the development team, that's what they're trying to do. Their stated goal is to make a hardcore rally sim. And I hope that's what it ends up being. And some of the things that they say they're adding lead me to believe that that's the direction that they're heading in. So I was able to ask some of the main development team, who, by the way, there are folks on that team that do Richard Burns Rally, and even a few that do Sim Rally Masters. And it's not somebody that tried one stage once. There's some folks in there that compete in it, and I'm not going to out exactly who they are. I'm sure somebody will figure that out eventually. But the fact that some of those guys are the ones that are working on Assetto Corsa Rally is very exciting to me because they at least get why we nerds really like the hardcore stuff. So that's a really exciting part. And so I did ask some questions to them. One around realistic damage. How hardcore can the damage get? And they did say that you can absolutely, ruin your car by running into a tree off stage, in one hit, if it's a hard enough hit type of thing. Or you can blow tires, you can break all different parts of your car and things. And so it sounds like there's a very expansive damage model, and on the very hardest settings will be something that you could end your rally, early, which would be great. I think that's one of those things that some of the other games don't, they're not quite as punishing. And when it's not as punishing, if you can hit a tree going 100 miles an hour and still continue in a lot of circumstances, then you're not quite as scared to actually push the limit and things. So it was neat to see. There's a lot of little things like you get time penalties if you cut the stage and things, but if you do hit a spectator, God forbid, you get kind of a reset, but you get a time penalty added on because of it. If you hit or run into the checkpoint folks at the start and the end time stops for the stage, you will get a time penalty for that as well. So you can't just go flat out into the marshal at the end of the stage. And that brings up the point, probably have seen places that you can drive to the controls, both the starting control as well as the finish control after the stage, which is neat little immersion things like that. There's also a lot of little added stuff in it. There's like photographers that run out onto the stage and try to get pictures of you, very Richard Burns Rally-esque. There's also animals that can run across and things. You can't hit any of them, but they do add that little randomness. They're not the same every time either, which is a little bit different than RBR is. So it just kind of keeps you on your toes. And overall, there's a bunch of randomness to this game that I think is really good. So some of the things that were really interesting about it is stage degradation is simulated, not based off of settings like new and worn or extra worn. It is actually simulated, at least in what I was told. And especially if you're doing like an AI scenario, if you've got 30 cars that go before you, the stage is going to be worn out through simulating 30 runs of cars through that stage, both for tarmac and for gravel. So you're obviously going to have a ton of ruts and stuff on gravel. You're going to have a bunch of dirt and things pulled onto the circuit for pavement stuff. And I guess because it's simulated, it's not going to be identical every time. So even if you do two separate scenarios where you run 30 cars before you on the stage, it might be a bit different, each time you do the stage. The weather effects add a lot to it. Rain feels very different on gravel than the dry gravel feels. I think I have a clip of when I was trying to take off in the 131 in some dry gravel, dry dirt really. The car just spins its tires. It's a lot of dirt that it's trying to move through, but more on the wet surface, it was a lot more slidey and skidded across the top, unless you found some of those mud areas. But in most of the gravel, it was actually a lot more slick with wet, which I guess makes sense. But the dry doesn't feel grippy. It feels like you're actually trying to move dirt with the tires, which is very cool. There's also atmospheric effects and things. So if there's some mountain stages and all that, if your car, climbs a lot of elevation, you might have less horsepower depending on the engine of your car. And it seems overall like the weather engine itself is kind of what you see in AC Evo. I think it's got everything but seasons from what I could tell. So you could do any kind of rain, any time of day, stuff like that. But the stages themselves, since they're laser scanned, they do kind of remain static in what season and stuff that they're in. But they're very beautiful. And I saw some feedback online about this being Unreal 5. And I think this is one of the negatives, from what we've seen so far, is that the hardware requirements for the game are going to be quite steep because you need to run Unreal Engine 5. So I think it's like a 2080 minimum graphics card for it. But on all of the rigs and things I tried it on, which at the Expo, they've got pretty good PCs overall there, but never noticed any sort of frame drop or stuttering or weird shadow flickering in and things. It looked way better to me than Assetto Corsa Evo does. And I know the engines themselves diverged quite a few years ago. But yeah, it does look quite a lot more polished and finished in the graphics department than that game does. And the scenery and stuff looks incredible. It really does look very good. And it's tough to tell on the footage that I'm sharing here because it's all taken with cameras looking at monitors, which never looks good unless you've got really, really nice stuff. But it is a good looking game, I think, just from what I've seen. Now, there is only the 2 stages, 2 locations that are going to be in the initial game, and I think they want to launch 1.0 with 4 locations, they were saying, although it could be wrong on that. But that is one of the 2 things that I'm worried about, and how long of a life this game could have. And that's how many kilometers, how many stage miles do we have? And at the initial beta release, it's only going to have 130 kilometers of road in it, which is really like needs 10 times more than that to be something I think a lot of the competitive folks would consider. When you only have 100 kilometers of stages, it's going to turn into a hot lapping game pretty quick. Now, it'll be fun to do, you know, the first few runs through or the first few weeks when people are all learning it, but it would be something very quickly that everybody that's playing it is going to know every corner. You don't even really need pace notes or anything like that to get through it. So the only way to really remedy stuff like that is to add more distance, and because it's all laser scanned and everything, that's going to be quite hard for them to do. So that's one of the things that I'm a little worried about. They've said that they're very eager to make more stages. They've got more coming for the initial release, and it is 130 kilometers in one direction, so unique roads. So you can reverse that. There's 260, and then of course, within those, there's going to be different like sub stages and things. So there is a bit to play with initially, but it will get stale quite fast unless they add more, and we'll see how fast they could do the laser scanning and things to keep up with it. Personally, I'm not as worried about the amount of cars. I think there's only supposed to be 10 cars in it at the initial launch as well, but the ones that they have in there already seem kind of fun. It reminds me a lot of Dirt Rally 1 and how limited it is. And so I really liked the 131 Abarth. I think it's a great car for folks that like the rear wheel drive stuff with an H pattern and everything, because it is pretty tame compared to things like an Escort or even like an Ascona or something. The 131 is a bit easier to drive overall, and so it's quite nice. But they have a nice kind of random selection of cars, and it feels very similar to the vibe I got playing like Dirt Rally 1 back in the day, where it's kind of like a rally, bare bones type rally experience, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. But other things that could keep it quite fresh, and I was really surprised to hear about this, but they've actually done quite a lot of work on the single player AI experience. And so initially there's only going to be time trials and things like that. But once they do get to the full 1.0 release, or within some of the betas, they're planning and building different single player experiences to do, your own rallies offline or championships offline. And they've put a lot of thought and work into the AI itself, where the AI have personalities. Some drivers will be better on different stages or different weather conditions, or in different cars than other ones. And they simulate all the runs, like I was mentioning before. They simulate all the runs of the AI drivers. You can't watch them from what I was told, but they actually simulate them so they can throw in things like mechanical failures if they have an issue on a corner or they crash. It sounds like eventually you might be able to see a crashed car off the edge of the road if it does crash, but maybe not initially. But it actually does do their runs, so stage degradation and things does matter for the AI as well. And I did ask about how the balancing is going to work, and it is right now based off of a goal time for different difficulty settings. And I did try to float the idea that it would be great if they based that goal time off of like the global leaderboard median, run of the top whatever percent of players, throw out the really, really fast times, but then base the stage time that the AI try to get off of kind of what an average fast player would get. And they seemed interested to that, but who knows? It's very easy to give these guys too many ideas, or just kind of overload them with your ideas when I know they probably have a billion of them, but you at least got to try to tell them, right? Yeah, so the fact that there is this offline mode and AI that have all these features and things means to me that it's not an afterthought, which in the past, I feel like in rally games, AI is often an afterthought. And so it's neat to hear that it's maybe incorporated from day one. But I did mention there was 2 things that I didn't quite like. One being the limited number of stages, and the other one was that you will not be able to edit your pace notes from the get-go. And for us folks that are doing a lot of RBR, I think that's the thing that for the really hardest of hardcore, you really get into doing once you do a lot of rally. You want to be able to edit your own pace notes. You might develop your own style, or you maybe just don't like some of the base notes. And so I understand it's a fraction of the player base. It's probably 0.5% of the people that play the game would ever try something like that. So you have to understand that's why these games don't have those features in them, because they take time to develop, and there's not many people that would use it. But that being said, I could tell, and unfortunately you're not going to be able to hear any audio from any of my footage with the actual game. Maybe one of them might have had some actual audio, and I'll try to crank it up if it did. But you're wearing headphones at the convention for all this stuff, so you just get the background noise. But the pace note audio itself is definitely a like system where the game reads numbers and then says the pace notes. It's not like Dirt Rally 2 where it was a recorded monologue, which was awesome. I think the pace note audio in Dirt Rally 2 is some of the best that's ever been in a rally game. It's so authentic with Phil Mills and everything, but you can't mod that or edit that very easily because it's literally a recording that gets played along with the stage. So it feels much more, and I believe it is from talking to them, it is more of they tag corners with note numbers and then it just says those, and so they can tweak them. And so it does exist the possibility that they can make pace note changes. I just think I tried to voice as loud as I could that would be one of the main things that they got to do. And I heard from others that a lot of folks have said this to them, at least the RBR diehards have been trying to say this. So hopefully that is something they could take into consideration. If they can make it possible to edit pace notes and add a bunch more distance in stages, those are both going to be very, very good things to help make this a much more appealing game, I think, to all of us, hardcore rally nuts out there. So like with all these things, it's a very much initial look. I got to try it, I think, for a good amount of time, and I really thank some of the folks that let me try out different rigs, the Fanatec folks, the Assetto Corsa development team as well, Assetto, Jardier helped hook me up with them. I think Jimmy helped hook me up with some of the other guys to get in there and try some of this equipment that's locked behind doors and all of that. But I'm making this special kind of quick video about it because I'm really enthusiastic about it. And it's, hopefully not one of those things I'm just getting swept up in the expo and what's exciting there. But it really was a surprise for everybody. Not something that I was expecting at all to see at the expo. Hadn't even heard a rumor about it. And the fact that it's so far along and will be something that we'll all be able to test on our own very soon. We'll be able to have our own opinions, I guess, of it then. So thank you for watching. This is a very quick video. I wish I could show more and do more, but we'll have to wait a couple weeks for that. But yes, I'm gonna get back to editing my full Sim Expo kind of video and things and figure out what that's gonna be. And so you'll see that soon. So thank you for watching. This is GP Laps, and I'll see you all again next time.